do you just want to introduce yourself for the Sangat, those that are listening? You said the name is Vick for sure, but what is your actual full name or your spiritual name that you have?
My name is Vick. I have a spiritual name, Vrindapati Das.
Okay.
And in one sense, you can say I've got many different hats, where different sampradayas and different spiritual traditions where I've received training have given me different names, for example.
Yeah.
Like my astrology teachers gave different names, my yoga teachers gave different names. Out of love, you know, and out of the kind of diksha that they give or the mantras that they give you these names, you know.
Yeah.
And I think also even within the Sikhi Panth as well, when you take Amrit,
yes,
there's an option to change your name. If you don't have a Sikhi name, they can give you a Sikhi name. Or at least you get the Kaur and the Singh for sure, right? So
yeah, you do.
Yeah, so similarly, it's like that when you have this entry into the Adhyatmic, what we call Paramat, the path of learning about the Paramatma. You get to, one sense you can say the Guru gives you a new birth. So it's a similar concept. So, but yeah, you can call me Vic.
Thank you so much.
Or Vrindapati, whatever you want.
That's probably hard for me to remember.
Yeah,
so I'll stick with Vic for now. It's okay. And so we came over to the Hare Krishna stall earlier as well at this Wellbeing Festival. And so can you tell us a bit more about just Hare Krishnas in general as well? Because we have a video on our channel actually where I know you've met Bhai Jagraj Singh as well, who we'll talk about a bit later on. You know, he actually did a video on YouTube with a Hare Krishna as well.
Sure.
And a lot of people were quite surprised, even myself, a lot of the similarities.
There's huge similarities.
Hanji.
Huge similarities.
So can you just tell us just a bit about the Hare Krishnas, and we'll probably realize all the similarities as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. Just like the Sikhi Panth, the Hare Krishna Panth, if you like, or the Hare Krishna movement, it's about Naam. It's about the chanting of the holy name. It's about making God accessible to the average human being. Because we know that in history, you know, even at the time of Guru Nanak Dev Ji, that there was a kind of social hierarchy, which is not even really advocated by the scriptures. It was just society had ingrained it. And we can say, you know, like within Sikhism and within the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, that the Kali Yuga has come and corrupted the age in many ways, which kind of then led people to become proud of their status, and there was oppression. There wasn't always oppression. There was also this many movements that started in the medieval ages, which began to revive. I always call it a kind of parallel lines to the kind of, you know, the kind of formal societal structure that was there. There were always parallel lines, which we can call bhakti movements. And Sikhi is very much about bhakti. In Sanskrit, it's bhakti, and in Gurmukhi, in the Gurbani, it becomes the dialect changes it to bhakti. So you have the gaga in it, you know, bhakti becomes the most important thing. And really, it's taking the concept that in the Kali Yuga, that the human beings are so fallen and so degraded that they can't do all of these ritualistic practices. They can't do this long meditation in the forests and the jungles for enlightenment, just like they did in the previous ages, like in the Satyuga and the Treta Yuga and the Dwapar Yuga. And they can't do these big fire ceremonies and things like that, which were for the previous age. In the Kal Yuga is Naam. It's the chanting of Naam. And it's that Naam that actually takes you across the ocean of material suffering, that you get released from the cycle of reincarnation, birth and death, and takes you to the spiritual world. Yeah, we say Goloka Vrindavan. Yeah, so this is where Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead resides. He's a person. God is a person, a living, breathing, not human being, but a spiritual, eternal being. You know, and in Sikhi we have he's Ajuni Se Bhang. Even when you look at the avatars within, Krishna, for example, he was not born like a mortal. He's immortal. He appears in the material world. The Akal Purakh appears. He does not. He's Ajuni Se Bhang. But it's the Naam in the Kali Yuga that is the most important thing to bring people to higher spiritual consciousness. And in order to get there, in order to be able to understand and appreciate the Naam, you have to have the teachings. And the teachings comes from the encyclopedic understanding of the Granths of South Asia, which for Sikhi is the Shri Guru Granth Sahib Ji as a predominant guru, and for the Hare Krishna tradition is Srimad Bhagavatam, which is also known as Granth Raj Srimad Bhagavatam. They call it Granth Raj, just like we have Shri Guru Granth Sahib Ji. And Bhagavad Gita. These are the bhakti literatures. And from my understanding, even some of the bhakti saints who are familiar with the kind of Krishna consciousness movement is also found in Shri Guru Granth Sahib Ji. Bhai Surdas Ji has one Bani in the Guru Granth Sahib Ji. Bhai Meera, the Bhaktini Meera, who is a devotee of Krishna also, like Surdas Ji, also has one Bani in the Shri Guru Granth Sahib Ji. So in the Shastras, it's written, Harir Naam, Harir Naam eva kevalam, Bolo nasteva, 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 gati aranyatha. That the chanting of the holy name is the only way, the only way, the only way, the only way, and your only gati, your only final destination can be achieved is through Naam. So this is how similar Sikhi in one sense is, because it's a bhakti movement. And I did my undergraduate degree, my master's degree in South Asian history, in art and archaeology and South Asian history of South Asia, where I studied the medieval period. And a key part of that medieval period is Sikhi, because Sikhi is born during that time period when we have Babur comes to India, and you have Guru Nanak Dev Ji at that time, just after the Lodhis are just leaving Guru Nanak Dev Ji doesn't have a very strong, good opinion about the Lodhis. He says they're not doing very good.
No.
Babur comes, Guru Nanak Dev Ji, the Sikh parampara starts from there. Similarly, contemporary to Guru Nanak Dev Ji was Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu of Bengal.
Okay.
Right? Who's also for the Hare Krishna movement and for Hindus in broader bhakti movements. I mean, Hinduism again is an umbrella term. There's so many panths within that movement. Under Hinduism, that this one tradition of bhakti and the chanting and congregational chanting of the holy name was propagated by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And the communal eating of prasad, like langar, was also done by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, where he would get everybody together, even low-class people, they would come together and they would eat the Jagannath prasad from the Jagannath Puri temple.
Wow.
And the very fascinating thing is that these two Mahapurukh, Sadguru Nanak Dev Ji and Lord Shri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, both met, actually.
Okay.
They actually both met. So there's actually one Chaitanya Bhagavat written in Odia language. And in that language, it says that one day, a sant called Nanak came and met with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and they discussed the Bhagavad Gita.
Did they say where they met?
They met in Jagannath Puri.
Okay.
And we know that this was true, that Guru Nanak Dev Ji went to Jagannath Puri. And even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had followers who were not allowed to go into the temple. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was also trying to fight this cause, just like Guru Nanak Dev Ji was. So they both have the same common interest, that they want the Naam, they want this Jagadish of Jagannath of this temple. He's the Lord of the universe. But how can you restrict all these people from going into the temple? The Satsanga Ji, this is like, really what the Gurbani is talking about. This is what, in Krishna consciousness, the Bhakti movement is talking about, is that actually the accessibility to God is a direct process that can be done via the gurus, through the teachings of the guru. It's just the guru, it becomes like the transparent via medium. I always think I'm like this, that like we can see directly something, but our vision is blurred. But as soon as we put the glasses on, we see with clarity. If the impaired vision is there. In Kali Yuga, we all have impaired vision, but when we wear the glasses, the teachings of the guru, teachings of the Vani, in Sanskrit it's the Vani, and Gurmukhi we say Bani. The Vani is the spoken word, right? That we actually can see with clarity.
They kind of say this in Siddhi Sukhmani Sahib.
Yes.
I'm sure you heard of that prayer before. Say Gyan Anjana Gurdiya. Exactly.
And the same Sanskrit mantra, Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya. Jnana Anjan. What is Anjan? Anjan is the corallium. It's a black mascara. You put it, the knowledge, that mascara of knowledge, I put it on my eyes and then I can see. But what is Vidya? Even this Latin word, video, means to see clearly, to see with knowledge. Vidya comes from this word Vidya. And so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was preaching bhakti movement to people who were, in one sense, criminals even.
Yeah.
There's a story. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he liberated 2 Brahmins who became dacoits. They were looting people, killing people, murdering people. They were the worst criminals. And they actually picked up a pot and threw it at one of the associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he started bleeding from his head. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became so angry, he was like, who are these people? And he called his Sudarshan Chakra to get rid of these culprits.
Yeah.
But then Nityananda Prabhu reminded him, he said, no, in this incarnation, you are the Adi Purusha, the Supreme Lord in incarnation. You're here to give compassion to all of these people. Compassion. So you please be merciful. So the devotee of God is more merciful. That's why the teachers are so merciful, because they give God freely to everybody. They give the holy name freely to everybody. God himself, he's known to everybody, but he doesn't give his kripa and vision of him until you earn it. But the Guru is so merciful that even if you're a criminal, he'll pick you up. He gives you the naam. He gives you the holy name of the Lord. So this is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then also Baba Shri Chandji, we know, the son of Guru Nanak Dev Ji, apparently also met with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And many saints would come. It was like in India, you have this confluence of ocean, rivers, holy rivers. The Ganga comes in, the Saraswati comes in, the Yamuna comes in, Mandakini comes in. All these holy rivers come in together, and they make this one river called the Ganga. All these holy people of India come together, and they come into this river, and they're all leading us back to God. Back to that, what in Sikhi is the Akal Purakh, which in the Vedas is the Adi Purusha. And in Krishna consciousness, we say Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. I'm worshipping the Adi Purusha always, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that's what Krishna is teaching in the Bhagavad Gita, that when you surrender unto me, you'll never have to take birth again in this material world. The Hare Krishna movement then actually was started by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, was propagated for many years, many years, and the teachings became lost. It even eventually started to become dwindled to became very select few who had this knowledge. Again, in the late, we can talk about in the colonial period when the British had finally arrived in India, and we had a tradition where the same lineage of people who were in Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's line, they revived the Sankirtan movement again in Bengal. And some years later, in that same lineage, came a very, very great saint, that came in the 60s. He was born, obviously, much earlier than that. His name is His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada took the order of his guru, his Vidya Guru. He said you should print books in English and you should go to the West and preach to them and give them the Naam. And so he took the message of Lord Chaitanya, and I can say confidently the message of our teachers, because the Naam is being spread even within the Sikhi Panth. So the same cause, but to the West. He said that in the Kali Yuga, people would do that. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu predicted, he said, in the future, I will send my Senapati. He calls him a Senapati, a commander-in-chief. And he will go to the West, and he will spread my holy name, and the Naam will be spread in every town and village. So that prophecy, in one sense, you can say is true, because it's all becoming to that realization. Now the Hare Krishna movement is being heard. The mantra of the Naam, for example, is being heard in every town and village. There are 100 and more. He set up 108 temples in his lifetime in major cities of the world, and they serve prasad. Just like in the Gurdwara, there is langar. There's langar in the Hare Krishna temple where they will go and sit and take prasad. They distribute food because they believe that's the kirpa. Prasad is a Sanskrit word, which is also the same in Sikhi. Prasad means mercy. Means kirpa. It's the same word. So the Guru Prasad or the Krishna Prasad, right? is distributed to people. The spiritual literature, the knowledge of the Gita is distributed to everybody. And the chanting of the holy name. And through the chanting of the holy name, the heart becomes pure. And this washing of the, the washing of the cloth, as they say in the Bani, it says, wash your cloth to become purer. And that's what the Hare Krishna movement really is. It's actually the same kind of concept of spreading the Naam, spreading the holy names. So I'm really happy that you guys are here. I'm really happy that the Hare Krishna devotees are here. And I'm very grateful that you've invited me to this talk.
Thank you so much for coming on as well. And just one thing I want to pick up on as well is the idea of resources as well.
Yeah.
And I remember speaking to somebody just a few months ago. They're saying that actually the Hare Krishnas are doing a lot of great work when it comes to providing resources in English.
Yes.
You actually have quite a lot of resources available, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They have resources available, and they have other humanitarian projects as well. A lot of books. Srila Prabhupada himself translated the books. He used to sleep 2 hours a day. He used to spend all the time preaching, giving you can say the mat of the shiksha or the information about Krishna consciousness to people. And he used to translate at night time from 12 o'clock at night to 4 o'clock in the morning. And then his day used to start after sleeping only 2 hours. These Mahapurukhs can do that. They, it's not in the power. I mean, I don't know. I can't stay. I can't survive on 2 hours sleep only. But these people have this really this adhyatmic shakti that they can actually do that to elevate people. Recently, we had devotees on the border of Ukraine and Poland as well distributing food. I understand that there were many Gurdwaras and Sikh groups who are going there and doing the same thing as well. So it's like when you put the two together, you just see that there's just so many similarities of the whole thing. And it's beautiful. I've been to the Golden Temple and many Gurdwaras in India. And I have a friend of mine who, her name is Radhika Kripa Devi Dasi, and she's also written a book called Vaishnava Teachings in Sikhism. Because we know that Guru Granth Sahib Ji is a synthesis of many, many different banis that have been collected together. And they are very core teachings that we find within the Shri Guru Granth Sahib Ji, which are very on parallel, with that. I mean, even, we read Ram Japo Ji Aise, Dhruv Prahlad Japayo Hare Jaise. The name of Prahlad Maharaj is a devotee of Krishna, of Vishnu. And Narasimha Dev comes as an incarnation. This is written in Bani. And not only is he just mentioned in the Gurbani, he's mentioned 27 times in the Shri Guru Granth Sahib Ji. The name of Prahlad, Bhagat Prahlad. Who is Bhagat Prahlad? He's a character in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is what Hare Krishnas are reading. Which also Hindus read. The Bhakti saints, they read the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's called the Amala Puran, the spotless Puran. And Dhruv Maharaj. Who is Dhruv Maharaj? Dhruv was also the son of a great king. This king's name is Maharaj Uttanapada. You know the story of Dhruv Maharaj?
I've heard it, but I'm not that great.
So the katha of Dhruv Maharaj is the detail of that. It doesn't go so deep in the Gurbani about the story. Maybe I'm wrong. But the depth of that story comes from Srimad Bhagavatam, but it's found, the reflection of that is also found in the Shri Guru Granth Sahib Ji. So Dhruv had a father, his name was King Uttanapada, and he had two wives, Suniti and Surichi. You know the story? Yes. A little bit, yes, Suniti and Surichi. And the older wife had a son, the younger one had Dhruv. And she very cruelly said to him that you can't climb up on the lap of the king because you are not going to be the heir to the throne. So he was hurt and he went crying to his mother. And his mother was an enlightened being. She had bhakti in her heart. So she wanted to do something to help him. She said that, well, maybe in your next lifetime you may be able to have this kind of, padvi, this kind of place. But he was so upset. And she said, look, the only person who can help you is God. The only person who can help you is God. So he leaves home and he goes to the forest. And in the meantime, Devrishi Narad hears that actually this Dhruv is actually gone to the forest to go and do meditation. this is in a different yug, so he wasn't just chanting Naam. He was, of course, meditating on God, but the system in that yug was different to the system in the Kali Yug. So he was doing a lot of meditation, breathing. He was able to master his breath through yoga. He was able to only eat leaves after every 5 days. Like, he got to that level where his tap was so something
intense,
else. In Kali Yug, we don't do that. Prabhada Simran Japta Puja in the Kali Yug. In the Gurbani, this is what is mentioned in Sukhmani Sahib part, right?
Hanji.
And Prabhada Simran Sabte Ucha is the greatest in the Kali Yug. And the teachings are there, and the key principles are found within the Sukhmani Sahib. The Sikhi principles are really basically condensed in Sukhmani Sahib anyway. But when you read in Srimad Bhagavatam, here you have this character who is doing all these austerities. So Narad comes and gives him a mantra. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. He says, you chant this mantra, right? And he then gives him the mantra, and he says, you can do all this tap and everything, but you need to surrender unto the Naam, unto the holy name, to be able to get much, much deeper realization. So he performs this mantra meditation many, many hundreds of years. And eventually, Lord Narayan comes, Kal Purakh himself appears and says, what do you want? Why are you doing so many things? And he touches his shank to his head, and it cools his mind. Seeing the Akal Purakh having sakshatkara, divya drishti, he got to have face to face with God himself, just like Guru Nanak Dev Ji disappears for so many days. He has sakshatkara with God direct, as a direct dissemination of spiritual power and knowledge. This came with Dhruv's case, he went via his Guru Narad. He had to go through the Guru Mat to be able to understand God. So he got this mantra, he's doing his meditation, and he said to the Lord, he said, now I don't know what even I have to ask for, because I was looking for a piece of glass in comparison, and now I've got the greatest jewel that you can ever find in the world. I found God. I found my Mila Mere Preeta Me Jio, Tud Bin Khadi Numani. Right? This is Shabad, right? We sang in Gurbani. That once you found your beloved, it's your eternal happiness is there. And actually, the whole Bani, in many ways, is written in the mood of the gopis. Mood of the gopis is to attain that love of that bhakti, that prema bhakti of God. And Gurbani also, just like the Bhagavad Gita talks about the nirguna God, the nirakara, the impersonal God. It also talks about the sagun God. In Gurbani, it says the nirguna and sargun. They say sargun. Actually, it's sagun. But they say nirguna and sargun because of the dialectical differences. But it's the same concept. Both are found in the Bhagavad Gita and in Sikh literature. And there he found God personal. Realizes God is actually a person. He can interact. He's talking to me. He's giving me darshan. I'm having the darshan of God. I don't need anything. He says, I don't need anything. Now I found you. I have everything. So the Lord, he says to him, don't worry. You will rule the earth 100,000 years. And I give you a planet. It's called Dhruv Lok. And that Dhruv Lok is the pole star. At night, we see it. Even sailors have to use it to navigate. The pole star that we see is called Dhruv Tara in Sanskrit. And it's also mentioned in Gurbani, actually. They all knew that the pole star is actually very, very powerful. Why? Because it's a Mahapurakh sitting there, giving blessings to us. Actually, if we connect to Gurbani and learn about Dhruv, here's these stories, we learn deeper. We find that all the teachings that we find, the stories of the Ramayana, Krishna, not only in Gurbani, actually, the Dasam Granth Sahib Ji, and then also this Govind Gita written by Guru Govind Singh Ji, and all of these supplementary texts that we find that are there. And if you want to go even broader than that, then you can look at the teachings of Baba Sri Chand Ji as well, which is, again, controversial, but different panths are there within the 100%. It's different umbrellas under the same thing. Even in Sikhi they say Chonkiya Chande Jugo Jugo Natalan. So Chonkiya means plural. Many different chonkis that happen. Many different groups will come. Different flags under the protection of the Khalsa that Guru Govind Singh Ji has created. He was protecting all these bhakti movements. So he goes, creates the Nirmale, he creates the Udasins, he creates all of these. But they're different bunts, different teachings, different sampradaya. Again, those rivers coming together, running in, coming to that. So this is a really powerful thing about it, is that these similarities that you find are there. And I think the more we learn to appreciate these stories, the more we go into depth. And the good thing about it is because I'm a student of Sanskrit and Bhakti literatures of the Hindu tradition, as well as the Sikh traditions, it's very then clear. There's no kind of like, misconception. For me personally, other people may disagree. I might be bombarded later with messages from people who might have differences of opinion. But the more I've read into Sikhi, the more I've read into the Bhakti texts, even from Vedas and, Upanishads and things like that, I have found the only one single truth, ultimately, that in the Kali Yuga it's a naam that has to be chanted. And I think the more we develop these friendships, the more we develop these deeper bonds with each other, understand that actually the work, God is doing work through many people, through many chonkiya, through many chande that He has put, and they're His chande. And the more we understand that, jugo jugo natalan, for yugas, we say jug jug in Punjabi, but in Sanskrit it's yugo yugo. Yeah. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya juskritam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Every age I come to get rid of the miscreants and re-establish dharma. It's written in the Gita.
Very similar to Guru Gobind Singh says.
And Guru Gobind Singh Ji saying,
said, Jab jab hot arista para, tab tab dehe tart avatara.
Exactly.
Whenever there's any obstacles on the path for the saint, then they take upon a form and they rebalance everything out.
Exactly.
Well.
Either God sends saints to come and liberate people and give them that, or God appears as the avatar himself to kind of give some knowledge.
Like you're saying earlier,
exactly. Well. So Guru, actually, is very interesting that the Guru is the Vani incarnation of God. The God, he's like, at the same time, he's a representative of God.
Anji.
He is not God, but also is God. And that's an unusual paradox. I think a lot of people don't understand.
People struggle with that, even
they struggle
the
with that
community as well. Yeah, I agree.
So, from my personal kind of perspective, is that actually, I always say this to people: is that a guru or a teacher is like a light bulb. When it's connected to a current, it gives prakash, it gives light. But as soon as that comes disconnected, it's no longer connected to that source. But that doesn't mean the light is not available anymore. Any sant, unfortunately, it happens. You see, even though in the Sikh Parampara, in the main Sikh Paramparas, Shri Guru Granth Sahib Ji has been given the Guru Gaddi, Guru Manyo Granth, which is his Guru Granth. But then in addition to that, you have your Vidya Gurus, the Sangat is also the Gurus, and you have Mahapurak, who are also Gurus. We just don't formally call them that because the tradition is to try and make sure that we don't disrespect the Guru Gaddi of the Shri Guru Granth Sahib Ji. But the Vidya Gurus are there. They are Gurus like Baba Nand Singh Ji.
I was about to ask you if you know Baba Nand Singh Ji.
So Baba Nand Singh Ji, again, I'm a huge fan of Baba Nand Singh Ji because like tomorrow's Purnamashi, he used to say to people, he used to ask anybody who used to go there, he said, if you're a Hindu, you come here, do Naam, chant the name of Naam. Because what does the Gurbani say? Naam, Ram Naam Japo Lakhavari. 1 lakh. And it's recommended that as much as you can chant the holy name, you should chant the holy name. And he said from one Purnamashi to another Purnamashi, you should sit and just do this mantra constantly. Take a vrat, take a vow, and just chant it. If you're a Hindu, come here and do Ram Nam. If you're a Sikh, you can chant Vaheguru. You come and do the Mool Mantra. And Baba Deep Singh Ji, he was very powerful in one sense. He had the siddhi of mantra. That's why he was able to go into battle and take his own head and carry it back to Harmandir Sahib Ji. And that's very powerful because he actually had a siddhi of the Gayatri Mantra.
Okay. What do you mean by that specifically?
So there's a Sikh Gayatri Mantra also.
Okay. Gobinde Mukande.
Yeah, exactly. He had siddhi of this mantra.
They'll say that, Hanji, understand that.
So there is this teaching and he used to do different, like Panchbani on that part, and then they do like, repetitions of the mantra, the Japji Sahib. And Baba Nand Singh Ji was a big exponent of that. Now, of course, philosophical differences are there even within the Sikhi Sampradaya.
Yeah, definitely.
And even within Hinduism, there's so many different Sampradayas and so many different philosophical conclusions. So my understanding of that verse, Aneka kahe mata eka na manyo, From my perspective, it means that there are many different mats out there, and they are actually, even though the goal is one, the mat understanding is not one. So my interpretation of that verse is not that, oh, you know, you shouldn't. But ultimately, what is being mentioned? It says that the glories of God cannot be captured by the human being. The Shastras can write it, but even it's not enough. You can go on, Hari Anant, Hari Katha Ananta. If God is Anant, eternal, then his glories are also eternal. So you cannot capture eternality in just a few words or in a few anything, right? So this is, you know, from my personal research as I've been going on, everybody is working towards that main direction. The teachers have taught this thing. I'm, you know, huge fan of what is our Sant Ishwar Singh Ji Maharaj. Again, another Mahapurukh who came just to spread the Naam, you know, came to the West and did preaching. And in the beautiful thing about Krishna consciousness is that Westerners are taking up this life and preaching Krishna consciousness, pushing it out. And you can go, you have Russians, Italians, and so many different, you know, people from America and doing things. They're also spreading the every spiritual tradition should be pushing to spread the glories of God. And our Guru Srila Prabhupada said, you know, he said, so long as the goal is achieved, then your life is perfect. He did it on a TV interview. He was talking about this. He said, so long as you are chanting the holy name and you attain love of Godhead, that is the goal. He said, if that is achieved, then your life is perfect. These are his words. He said, you can be a Christian, you can be a Muslim, you can be a Sikh, you can be whatever. He said, so long as you have attained the goal of life, which is God, then your life is perfect.
Right. And anything you want to say, Penny?
Yeah, I was going to say, so you've talked about a lot about Naam, and you know how we have all of these. The message is the same ultimately, and it's conversation we were having earlier as well. You know, whether even if you look into Christian mysticism and you know Sufism,
hallowed be thy name,
right?
Yeah,
they're talking about the same thing, but you know we're at this Wellbeing Festival today, and so there's a lot of people here. They're looking for something. So, what do you take from all the research and the implementation that you've done? As you know, what is it that people can be doing to help them fulfill their purpose and get a better quality of life?
Yeah, this is good. What the good thing about our philosophies, the Sikh philosophy and the Krishna conscious philosophy, and is that this South Asian philosophy base actually guides humanity in understanding that there's a difference between spiritual practice and and subtle practice, mental well-being practice. A lot of the lines become blurred. You know, in the Western world, they see that mental well-being stuff is spiritual, and spiritual is mental well-being stuff, and that's not actually quite true. Spiritual well-being is actually beyond. You know, Gurbani says, "Kalli yoga na hoyi." You can't just do yoga, and the scriptures also talk. Indian scripture, even though we teach yoga is taught. The Bhagavad Gita speaks about yoga, but people get lost in that ritual, that practice, and it's not just having a healthy body, because after your body's gone, what about your subtle body, your sukshma sharira, which is your mind, your intelligence, your false ego. But inside that sukshma sharira, which you can call like a ghost, is your atma. And inside, next to the atma is Paramatma. I think it's the Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad or one Upanishad that talks about that these two, Atma and Paramatma, are sitting inside the heart like two parrots. One is enjoying the fruit of the tree and one is observing. The observer is God. And the one who's trying to enjoy the fruits and turning the way has become Manmukh, as they say in Gurbani. He's trying to enjoy the fruits of the tree. But as soon as he turns his face towards God, it becomes Antarmukhi or Gurmukhi, as they say within Sikhi, turns to God, turns to look towards God, then they can make a spiritual journey. But what's happening here is, by the presence of people of spiritual traditions like yourselves and with the Hare Krishnas here, it's actually about giving people the education that actually you have a physical body, you have a subtle body, and you have a spiritual body, and your spiritual body is the real you, not the physical body, not the mind, but your atma. And when we are here and guide people to that, then they understand that actually, yes, it's okay to do your massages and your yoga practice and your crystal healing and all of that because it helps you to be a healthy person in a physical body and in mind, because your atma has to sit in this vessel anyway. And to be of value of seva to God or to anyone, you have to have a healthy body and a healthy mind. Right? So even like people talk about chakras, the chakras are not spiritual. They're just gates. The Dasam Dwar, as they call it in Sikhi, but the chakras, the gates that are there, they are just gates that the subtle body, they are just connected as subtle energy centers, but they are part of the Sukshma Sharira, the subtle body. That's not the Atma. So after you die, the person who achieves liberation at the end of their death, they will leave their material body behind. They will leave their chakras and their Sukshma Sharira behind also. The Kundalini will not go with you. So this is the misconception. You use those as tools to help you as a launch pad to bring you into the mode of goodness, so that you can lead a sattvic life, so that you can use it as a conducive practice to then use it as a launch pad to go onto a spiritual practice. To transcend. And the only way you can do that is Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Eva Kevalam. Only way in the Kali Yuga is through Nam and hearing Sachi Bani, as they say. In Anand Sahib, we sing Suni Sachi Bani. Right? The Sacha Nama Tera Adhar. Sacha Nama Adhar Mera. Right? We talk about Nam. Sorry if any of my quotes are wrong from the Gurbani, so please forgive me.
Really good.
As they say, please to all the Sadh Sangat ji to forgive me for any mistakes that I'm making here. And as a Punjabi who's born in a mixture of different backgrounds, as a person who's grown up playing tabla in the Gurdwara since I was young, right? I've heard this, all of this. But how I was preached it was very different to how I understand it now after doing my research. Do you know what I mean? It was a very different experience to what I was learning when I was being told. It was almost scary sometimes, even being in different environments, thinking maybe there may be some conflict of interest. But the more you read, the more you actually learn, you actually think that the people who you are spiritually practicing alongside, they're your brothers and sisters. They're not your enemy. They're not your enemy. That actually the people who are pushing a higher consciousness to love God, to serve humanity, to chant the holy name of the God, and at the end of this life go back to the spiritual world. That's the biggest daan you can give to society. The biggest donation that you can give to humanity is to engage in this work. It's the complete cessation of suffering from this material world, from birth, old age, disease, and death altogether. So you have resources. I think I guess my message to people today is really you should read more and try to get different perspectives as much as possible, and use your mind to understand more and more about what is written in your parallel sampradayas that run parallel to you, so that you can learn to love them and appreciate them more. And when you realize that actually your cause and purpose is the same, your heart is full of more love, and we give up this ahankar, the ego. And this is what God really doesn't like, is the ego, the ahankar. Like even great kings come to the court of Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj, serving him. Can't remember, was it Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj or somebody else, but he looks at the hands and says, your hands are soft.
Guru Gobind Singh Ji.
Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj is cool. I'm sure many other gurus maybe have had this experience. He says, your hands are soft. And his ego is crushed. He's doing so much seva, but his ego is crushed because he hasn't done the menial service. His ego hasn't been chopped down to come to understand. So this is why when you were asking me at the beginning, what's your name? And I said, we always have to put das or dasi in our culture. When we take spiritual diksha, we always become something das or something dasi, which is also true in the ancient bhakti culture of Sikhi, because we have Guru Ram Das Ji, Guru Amar Das Ji, and even the Guru Pyare who became martyred in Chandani Chowk were also surnames Mati Das, Sakhi Das. They were Brahmins, and so here we have people who refused to give up the teachings of their Guru and said, we're ready. We're ready to do whatever our Guru instructs us to do, which means to go out there and preach.
Do you have any stories of that as well within your history of like those kind of sacrifices?
Exactly.
Here in the Sikh history.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you share one, please, if you don't mind?
Sure, absolutely. So the story that I was telling you about earlier of Jagai and Madhai. There were two criminals that were liberated by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu. They had a Muslim follower. His name, he was born in a Muslim family, and the Muslims didn't like the fact that he was a Naam. He used to do Naam Jap, and he used to chant day and night for 22 hours a day. He used to do Naam Simran, Naam Jap. He used to chant. So he was born in a Muslim family, so they're not considered by the caste Brahmins as being. Yeah, it's very interesting that within Sikhi we have a lot of caste Brahmins who are joining the Khalsa, who are also followers of the Guru as well, but they don't differentiate between the caste issues because they knew the real original teachings. They had proper teachings, if you like. But then there were those, what you could say, the rigid casteist type of people who would reject anybody who is not in their caste, who are not born, had a birthright. Although the Shastra doesn't advocate that, because the Bhagavad Gita, it says, Janma Karma Vibhagasha, that your duties in society are distributed according to your karma. It doesn't say Janma. It doesn't say Janma Vibhagasha. Karma Janma. It's not by your Janma how you're born. You may be lucky to be born as a doctor's son, but that doesn't mean you're going to be a doctor, right? Yeah. So this is where in that time there was a fluidity also, but there was also this rigidity, which is what, from my understanding, is what Guru Nanak Dev Ji and a lot of them used to battle against. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did also. So here we have Haridas Thakur, who is rejected by the Muslims because he wasn't practicing the Muslim faith as such, but he was not then fully accepted by past Hindus. But you can say that the Bhakti movement, or this incarnation of God himself, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, accepted him, and he would visit him every day. And what happened with Haridas Thakur is he was taken by the Muslims and beaten in 22 marketplaces. But we have the story, in historical terms, it's called a hagiography. The hagiography says that the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is the life biography of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, talks about how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he was this very powerful incarnation, he actually came to Haridas Thakur one day and showed him his back, and he had the markings of beating on his back. So when he was being beaten in 22 marketplaces, Haridas Thakur was just turning around and saying to his oppressors, he said, please just chant the name of God. He didn't say, please stop beating me. He said, just chant Hari Bol once. Hari Bol. And they said, you want Hari Bol? We'll give you Hari Bol. And they keep beating him. And he would smile because they were, by joking, they were just chanting the name of God.
That's beautiful.
And at the end, they thought that, he would die, but they weren't dying. And they said, look, you're not dying. Why not? He said, oh, you wanted me to die? Okay, I'll die. Don't worry. So he just, he with his own spiritual Shakti, he was able to leave. They threw him in the river. He got up on the other side and carried on walking. So he was dead. But then when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met him, people were asking, where were you? People say, where's God when I'm suffering? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed his back. He said, look, I took all the beating. So there are stories of people who were within the tradition, in the Hare Krishna tradition. Not only in Hare Krishna Vaishnava tradition, there are other Vaishnava traditions within, like in Ramanujacharya, you may have heard of, who later in that sampradaya comes Ramanand, who is mentioned in the Guru Bani. So there are many different references that I found in this line. And he had a disciple who he actually took very interestingly, Ramanujacharya took spiritual initiation from a lower caste. Yet he has a massive following. He's one of the biggest, kind of, if you could say, like out of the pie chart, one of the biggest slices of that pie chart of Hindus that are followed are actually the followers of Ramanujacharya. And they have this system where, you know, they can become, they call them the Bhagavatas, people of any caste who come and chant the name. And people were not, at that time, were not giving the naam to people. And Ramanujacharya went to the top of the temple and he says, I'm going to give everybody a mantra, just collect anybody as possible. And he just says, Om Namo Narayanaya. He gives everybody the holy name of God. So this was happening. Contemporary, this was before, actually, before the time of Guru Nanak Dev Ji, this was happening. Then you had, like, you know, other Vaishnava saints like Tukaram, Vittalnath, you know, that sampradaya. You had Gyaneshwar and all of that. These are different sampradayas, you know, different panths. This is what I want to maybe in the future write a book about. It's called Parallel Lines. Because whilst you have within Sikhi, within Bhakti movements, a lot of Bhakti movements, not just within Sikhi, but other Bhakti movements like Gaudiya Vaishnavism. The Hare Krishna movement is actually a Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. That's the traditional name of it. Called Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. Because Gaudiya Desh is actually the area where it came from. So they became the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, right? But there wasn't always this rigidity, like, it wasn't just like, you know, a heaven and earth difference between these are the Hindus and they are only caste believers, and then these are the people who are not. There was always these people who were running parallel, who were not following the caste system in the rigid format that it was presented. There were always people who were propagating the Naam, like the Alwars. They were predated Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Ramanujacharya even. They were really, really a lot, you know, and some of them were actually of the outcast, and they were, you know, chanting beautiful songs which are sung in Tamil even to this day. But the reason why we don't know about it is because we don't read enough. We haven't broadened our South Asian history or knowledge of the Bhakti movements that existed in South Asia to recognize that there are many different waves of Bhakti. Let's call it that. It's a nice term to put it. These waves of Bhakti that were fighting against the caste system, you know, who were propagating the chanting of the holy name, who were promoting equality. And at that time in the medieval ages, it became a thing. In South India, in Bengal, this was happening in Punjab. Guru Nanak Dev Ji was going. If you went to Gujarat, you had Narsim Mehta. So you had these Bhakti movements, and the Bhakti movement became big. And it had to, because the hukum was there from God, that in the Kali Yuga, things will become corrupted, and we need to have Naam, and Naam needs to improve everything in this Kali Yuga, because it's the only hope that we have to go back to the spiritual world. So, to both of you, I think I've spoken for a long time.
Thank you so much
with you guys, and my love to both of you. Thank you so much for having me. I hope I didn't say anything wrong or offend anybody in my, you know, my discussion with you guys.
No, thank you so much. It's nice and refreshing to hear the stuff that he's saying, especially from people that are listening in, you know, in the Sangat as well. You know, the similarities and how much Gurbani you have memorized as well. Like saying about playing tabla in the Gurdwara, so that you probably learn a lot of shabads through that as well, right?
I have so many favorite shabads. Like, you know, there's ones that are just like, you know, like in the mood of the gopi, you know, when they're singing Karamahin, Tanakare Vinanti, Kad Nanak Ave Vari, and then he sings Sabha Suhagan Marnarane, Ek Raat Deo Murari. And who is Murari? Murari is Krishna. It's that same Akal Purakh that everybody is talking about, in my opinion. Some people have different opinion. I've grown up with it where it's kind of been quite, you know, people are like, no, it's not the same thing. But after all, if the Shri Guru Granth Sahib Ji has been made accessible to everybody, then he can speak directly to me also, right?
Just say Jagat Guru, right? Everybody, that's your own personal relationship you have with the Guru, right?
Everybody has a personal relationship. And something inspire some different practices within spiritual thing will inspire people differently. Some people like kirtan more. Some people like doing seva more. Some people like distributing food more. Some people want to teach. Whatever is your nature, you have to engage it. That's your varna and your dharma. And actually, as far as I remember, that the Guru Govind Singh Ji says that I'm making a Sikh, Sant and Sipahi, to have all 4 varnas, to do all 4 elements of these traditions: the farming, the menial service, the priestly work, and the warrior work in one person. Because in the Kali Yuga, that's what we need right now. So the qualities of a Vaishnava, when you look in the Vaishnava Bhakti, is that he's also expert, which means that they also know how to do all of these things as well. Again, parallels.
Just one other thing to finish off with, because you mentioned earlier that you met Bhai Jagraj Singh as well.
I did,
it's really nice because, of course, this is actually me 5 years since they actually passed away.
Sure.
So, could you just share a few experiences you had with them, or if you met them?
Yeah, he came to my local Gurdwara that I used to play tabla at, Crawley Gurdwara, and I met with him, and we had a huge discussion. At that time, I was actually I was a monk.
Okay.
So I was going to, I went to the Gurdwara, and I heard that there was a talk going on, and he was talking, and it was really, really refreshing that actually somebody had come along and was talking to the youth, because a lot of the time they were outside playing football, in front of the Gurdwara in the car park or something, or just like playing cricket or something like that. And like not many people were like interested in sitting inside the Gurdwara to actually learn the Bani or like to actually understand what was going, probably because they didn't understand it. And the wonderful thing is that all of a sudden we had this very, wonderful young man who had come, and, he had his own philosophical stance on Sikhi. But what he desperately wanted to do was open up the world of Sikhi to not only the Sikhs, but to other people to be able to understand what Sikhism is all about and all of these kind of things. So he was always just so keen. I remember he just wanted to, even when they did a Hukamnama, he just wanted to translate it and explain it to people. But the Gyani said, no, you can't do it because we're running out of time. But I could see his eagerness, that he was just like, we've had a Hukamnama, but isn't that just important to try and translate it and get the message to people to understand, actually, this is what the Hukamnama of today is. So I could see that he was just eager to just get in there and try and say something. So he gave his 100%. He was trying to, give whatever he could. And it's a really sad loss for us, that he's passed on. I'm sure that the Guru has a different plan for him.
100%.
Wherever he is, whatever he's doing, he's in the service of, of that supreme personality of Godhead. And God rest his soul, and I just really, really hope that more people come forward, like you guys, to build friendly relationships with other, people who are out there, and just come to this recognition that we are all pushing the Naam. Even Muslims actually are pushing the Naam. There are 99 names of Allah. The Holy Bible says, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. And we are trying to do the will of God at the end of the day, right? So you can do all of these kind of things. And I think I should keep practice some silence now. I've spoken so much, but thank you so much.
No, I really appreciate that.
Benji, Virji, thank you. Thank you so much.
Where can we find you guys if someone wants to learn more about the Hare Krishnas on your own personal?
Sure.
Like that.
So I have my own kind of teaching and things that I do in Crawley. So we have our own group in Crawley. So you can look up Bhakti Yoga Center in Crawley. And then you can also look up ISKCON London, or you can look up Kirtan London. They have Kirtan events here in London as well. And here at the Wellbeing Festival, we've got a stall here, and they're teaching people to chant jap on their beads, and also do Kirtan here. So that is all going on, and they're distributing prasad and everything as well to people.
Awesome.
So you can find us. Just look for Bhakti in London, and somehow or other you will find some form of Bhakti happening somewhere or other. So it's a wonderful thing. And of course, those people who are joining, I would say look up basics of Sikhi as well.
Thank you so much.
So please, thank you so much.
To finish off there, we'll just say Fateh, if that's okay.
Yeah,
I'm sure you know the Fateh because
thank
you go to the
thank
side.
you.
So, Bhai Guruji ka Khalsa.
Bhai Guruji ki Fateh. Thank you, Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.